So the most poignant moment for me, every time I hear that story, the Christmas story, is always at the end, when Mary kept these things close and pondered them in her heart. She kept these things close and pondered them in her heart. What all did Mary hold close in that moment? What all did Mary ponder in the great wisdom of her mother's heart, in that stillness after her great labor of bringing this extraordinary life into this world? Mary, from what the gospel stories tell of her, was a wise and long-sighted soul. She was sustained by great faith and great love. And she knew that she was bringing this tender new life into a dangerous world during tumultuous times. She knew that her love for this child committed her to being there for him through all that life would bring. Mary held these things close and pondered them in her heart. In her commitment of love to this child, as we know, she would be there for him at the beginning, and she would be there for him at the end, when everyone else had abandoned him to his painful fate. We know that her commitment in love also meant that very early in Jesus' life, Mary and Joseph would have to flee with him as refugees to a foreign land and rely on the generosity and the hospitality of strangers for their survival, in order to protect this child from the vengeance of the tyrant who ruled in their land. Mary held these things close and pondered them in her heart. Mary knew as well the blessedness of this child, blessed and given by the Holy Creator to represent a very different kind of power in this world, a holy power for a holy life that would bring him to embody nothing less than the love supreme that seeks out and embraces the least and the last and the lost, which means all of us and all of each of us, and invites us to ultimate fulfillment in the glory of the universal God. Mary held these things close and pondered them in her heart. And when Mary held close that little body of her baby, she must have beheld her newborn's innocence and vulnerability, as well as that fierce life force that babies always have. And Jesus had a fierce life force throughout all of his life, a prophetic power similar to what the prophet Jeremiah called a fire locked up in the bones. And we are told that when Mary first learned that she was pregnant, the mystery of what all this would mean overflowed through her heart, and she sang out to God with a vision. "My soul exalts the Holy One, and my spirit rejoices in God who sets me free." And she sang of God's compassion, and she also sang of God's power that scatters the proud of heart, overthrowing the mighty, uplifting the humble, loading the hungry with good things and sending the rich away empty. So Mary felt the prophetic fire that Jesus would also carry. And she had some big dreams for this child and some dangerous dreams. And Mary held these things close and pondered them in her heart. This was a child whose purpose was love, and the greatest of love, an overwhelming and overflowing love, the kind of love that causes upheaval in our individual lives and in our collective lives, the kind of love that would lead him to seek the deliverance of all who suffer, the kind of love that would lead him to those who are the most vulnerable, who bear the brunt of human bitterness and brokenness and violence and neglect, the kind of love that would lead him to become one with the least of these, so that whatsoever we do to anyone, we do to him, the kind of love that would lead him to demand that we see nothing less than the image of God in each and every one. The kind of love that confronted head on all the forces that would deny and destroy that belovedness in others. The kind of love that would suffer the pain of that confrontation while showing the ultimate triumph of God's love supreme. Mary held these things close and pondered them in her heart. What all did she know? What all did she feel when she held her baby, who she knew was destined to embody this divine love in a world that can be so broken and brutal? I imagine that when she felt and pondered all these things, knowing through them nothing less than the presence of God, Mary wept tears of joy. Now, it was striking in the version that we heard of the Christmas story, the First Nations version, that Mary is called bitter tears. Right? That caught my attention. So in Hebrew, Miriam appears to have its roots in a combination of the words for bitter and for salt water, hence bitter tears. And through the years, scholars have pointed this out, and folks have found it pretty meaningful. There have been sermons preached about how the meaning of Mary's name means that she, in the love and the strength of her heart, did not run from the pain that her son would endure in the course of embodying the gospel of universal love. She did not run from that heartbreaking reality as so many others would, but she rather bore witness to it and embraced him through it with her great mother's heart. But were her tears bitter? I think she knew too much of love and too much of God for them to be bitter. So Miriam, before it was a Hebrew name, was originally an Egyptian name. And in Egyptian, Miriam means beloved, loved one. Beloved. And I think if we hold the Egyptian meaning along with the Hebrew meaning, I propose we call Mary not bitter tears, but tears of love. Tears of love. And when Mary, tears of love, held her newborn baby and held all these things close and pondered them in her heart, I imagine that she wept tears of joy. Tears of love wept tears of joy. Like so many mothers and fathers and families before her and since, when Mary held and beheld her baby, she wept tears of joy. We sing of joy in Christmas time. And my favorite joy song is the great abolitionist hymn, Holy Night, that says, "Let this weary world rejoice." This weary world rejoice. And this is a tears of joy kind of joy. This joy is not merely the opposite of sadness. This kind of joy is big enough to embrace pain and bear witness to tragedy, especially on behalf of those we love in this world that we love, while seeing deeply enough to know that despite it all, life cries out again and love endures. We weep tears of joy when a baby is born. We weep tears of joy when two people commit to the love that they share. We weep tears of joy when a great struggle is finally won, because the beauty of the moment is too much for our hearts to bear. We weep tears of joy because birth pains have somehow brought forth new life, because we feel the presence of those who have come before in the great movement of love whose cause we carry. We weep tears of joy for the great love and deep gratitude and wide new horizons of possibility that are somehow born anew yet again. We weep tears of joy for that liberating truth of what Howard Thurman, that long-sighted and wise soul, said about the meaning of Christmas, that however dark the moment or the days may be, the redemptive impulse of God is ever present in human life. And Mary held these things close and pondered them in her heart, weeping tears of joy. Thanks be to God.